For me, Swish is an experience.
I see.
So if you say Swish, we want you to have that full-on experience. When it comes to the community, going back to your question, Mayank, it's that experience of coming into Swish, seeing familiar faces, connecting yourself, networking yourself to the group of people that you have something in common, which is basketball.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Exponential Show. We bring you stories and insights from founders, thought leaders, and investors. A huge shout out to our friends at Multiply Marketing for sponsoring this episode. For this episode, it is a pleasure of mine to introduce my friend, Syd Sanchez, who runs the Swish sports ecosystem, if I may call it that. And we'll get into what they do in just a bit, but Syd, thank you for taking the time. I am very excited to speak with you today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. We're excited to be here.
My pleasure, Syd. So let's get straight into it. What brought us here? We are sitting at, I wouldn't call this your new location anymore, but your newer location.
Yes.
So I joined the Swish community a few years back when I was looking for places to play basketball. And I've seen you grow since then, but I'd love to know your background in terms of what brought you into this industry and what milestones you crossed along the way.
Okay. So before I get started, I would like to give a big shout out to our friend Mayank, by the way. Big congrats to the Exponential Show as well. More power, more episodes to come. You really do bring inspiration and encouragement to business people, entrepreneur like myself, and I'm happy to be here. So going back to the question, Mayank, I think it started way back when I moved to Thailand 11 years ago. Never had a plan. I was never a business person. I couldn't do any deals when I was back in college, remembering it from 10, 15 years ago. But I think my corporate stint back then kind of molded me into someone who I am as of today. And if you would allow me, I would probably go back to 10, 11 years ago on how everything started. I'm going to be name dropping a few people in a few places as well, if that's fine. So I started my career or my journey here in Thailand as an expat. I'm half Thai, half Filipino, by the way, but I was born and raised in the Philippines. So when I moved here with my family, I couldn't speak a word of Thai. I was able to speak Tagalog. I could speak a little bit of English, to be honest with you, right around 50% of English comprehension. But I tried to look for jobs. I tried to apply for a corporate work. The only job I can think of is to be an English teacher. So there was this vacancy at the place called Wall Street English. So I did PT or personal tutoring for Wall Street for around 2 to 3 years. Eventually grew into a senior PT and then decided it was time for me to move on. And then I got a chance to work with Chris English. So Chris English back then, shout out to Christopher, right? Chris English back then was the #1 bilingual school in Thailand. So they sent us teachers in a bilingual edutainment kind of purposes to teach corporate companies, to teach schools, to name a few, Bangkok University, Häagen-Dazs, a few well-known companies for us to be able to develop the English skill level with their staff. And I think that's where I started to like being on the spotlight. I think being on stage, we have to entertain the students. It's a whole lot of lessons that you have to teach. You have to go through 2-hour lessons every day, and you have to keep them entertained. That's one lesson that I learned from Chris. And then after 2 years of doing that, I eventually got recruited for this. Back then it was a smaller company called Untitled. It was a subsidiary of Grunsi Bank.
I see.
And they do microloans. in insurance now. I did a training officer there. So I also taught English at first, and then eventually moved on to training soft skills and other stuff that we do with the SMTs and the C-level individuals there. That molded me into someone who would listen to every struggle, every challenges that they face, and it's not easy. That's where I learned that handling a multinational corporation with big time bosses are not easy. A shout out to the CEO, MD, still as of today, Kun Num Piyasak. He was also born and raised in the US, moved to Thailand, did a few marketing stints for the company, eventually got promoted to MD after 2 years of being there. So he was kind of like the person who mentored me in a way of thinking outside the box. Going against the grain, and to be able to become a good leader. Not to become a boss in a way, which is also good and bad, depending on the environment you're at. So once I did that, I moved on to a training industry as well, but at an F&B business called Wine Connection. So I was there as an assistant training manager for Wine Connection, did my runs in all locations, and that's where I started my first venture, which is called Banh Mi and More.
Right.
So before Swish, I did my stint and still doing my stint as the head of operations at Banh Mi and More. Right now we span across 3 locations, one in Onut, that's in the first location of Swish, one in Asok, Sukhumvit 23, and the other one here as well at Swish Elite. So got to learn the ropes, ins and outs when it comes to F&B. COVID hit.
Right.
That was 2019. As before that, actually a year prior, I was talking to my family where we could start up our own passion project.
Right.
And we're Filipinos by heart, Filipinos by blood. Basketball for us was a no-brainer back then.
Right.
If you ask me why basketball, it's a very niche market, and not a lot of demand. That's what we asked ourselves every day as well back then when we were starting up. Lots of struggles, lots of hiccups along the way, lots of pressing that quit button more than 10 times, I would say, along the way. But then eventually with the right timing, with the right people, with the right connections, with the right community as well, and guidance from the mentors, here we are today, our second location, and expanding through our third location soon. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. So thank you for that background, Syd. A lot of that I did not know, especially what happened before Swish. So
Yes.
it's good to get that context and where you get the inspirations to do what you are currently doing. So it's very insightful for me as well. Now, Swish does a lot of things. Facility rentals, academy, events, brand partnerships. But whenever I introduce Swish to somebody, especially in my friends and family circle, I call you guys a basketball community. And it's just my way of describing what I feel is the heart and soul of Swish.
Yes.
But can you throw some light on why the community is such a big part of what you do? And is my understanding obviously correct in terms of the community being the center of everything you do? And how did you stumble into just building the community and then building a business around it?
All right, so I think, the community plays a huge role for Swish, where we at right now. We did a lot of trial and error when we started. Actually, you know what? Just to give a quick story. When we were first talking about building a basketball court, it was catered towards the Filipino people.
Right.
That's it. We didn't know anyone from the expat community. We didn't know anyone from the local community. Right. We only knew people who played basketball in Thailand who were Filipinos back then.
Right.
So we targeted that Filipino community, didn't work out. It failed miserably. They didn't want to use the court. It was dusty. It was outdoor. We didn't have the right facility for them back then. So we kind of tried to work on what we do best, and that is to connect ourselves to people, maintaining that good relationship when it comes to retention and having that sincere and pretty much feel at home experience when you're at Swish. So I think if people mention Swish, it's all over the place. People would think it's a basketball facility. It's a volleyball facility now. It's an academy. We do events. We partner up with so many schools, so many corporate brands. But for me, Swish is an experience.
I see.
So if you say Swish, we want you to have that full-on experience. When it comes to the community, going back to your question, Mayank, it's that experience of coming into Swish, seeing familiar faces, connecting yourself, networking yourself to the group of people that you have something in common, which is basketball. So it's not just a form of, okay, we rent out the facility, you come in, you play basketball. It's a one and done thing, but we want you to have that full-on experience. And having that community for us is very beneficial, and taking care of that community is one of the most challenging parts that we've ever had. Mayank, yourself, you've been with the community for around one year, correct?
More,
around 3 years, right?
In and out because I had moved away, but
yes, correct. So we've had people like yourself come play, invite a few people in, and then they become inactive for whatever reasons. They move out of the country, they move on to different things, but I think it's more of that continuity and that longevity from the community itself, which helps us become sustainable when it comes to making sure everyone's well taken care of with the community. And I think for me, starting it is not easy. You have to be part of, you yourself, you have to be part of a certain community first to know what it's like, to know how you can develop, how you can call people in. And mostly it starts with your inner circle. For me, it helped a lot having lots of Filipino friends, Thai friends, who we share the same goal or same interests, which is basketball. And that eventually grew into proportion. And I would say most opportunities that we had at Swish as well, given this interview with Mayank as well, majority came from that community that we have, which right now is around, combining two groups, around 800 to 900 people. So shout out to you guys, Swish family, Swish community. Without you, we wouldn't be here. And we promise to give you more projects and more initiatives in the future.
I'm sure you will. And I love the phrase that you use, the word experience, right? And I think that is a great way to describe what you guys do. And moving forward, I will use that phrase to introduce Swish to anybody.
Thank you.
I think it's a good way to describe what you guys do. And purely as somebody who loves basketball, who loves playing here, I see where you're coming from when you say seeing familiar faces, building almost like a friend group where it's like after a 10-hour day at work, you just go play basketball, hang out with friends. It's something that's an important part of my schedule now as well. So I see
all love, Mike. Appreciate it.
Coming from there. Now, you mentioned when you were transitioning in your early days, when you didn't have the correct facilities, and then you eventually evolved not just through the community, but also partnerships with schools and brands. Now, I see both as I follow you on social media and also through our common friends in the group, I see that brand partnerships are a big part of what you guys do now. So we see Anta here, we see Gatorade, you do a lot of stuff with Decathlon. I'm sure I'm missing a few, but how important have these corporate and school partners been in your journey, and what led you to identifying their importance in your entrepreneurial life?
Oh, 100%. I would say going back to what I've learned when I was working corporate, it was never the brand. It was more on the people who represented the brand.
Right.
And it's a funny story going back, thinking about it right now, just when you asked the question, is because when we had that struggle of selling Swish
Right.
to the people, selling Swish what we do to corporate brands, and failed at it miserably. There was a point in time where we tried to literally sell the business
Right.
to those same people.
I see. Interesting.
There were times where, it was even pre-COVID, before we opened, we tried to sell it to a few people. Once we opened, COVID hit, lockdown, we couldn't survive the first 3 months. We tried to sell it, approach people, and we tried to sell the business to them as well.
I see.
And then post-COVID, even during that time, imagine that, we were getting customers,
Right.
we were getting demands, but that just adds to your running costs. You had to hire more people, you
Right.
had to add up an F&B spot, and we still couldn't figure it out. And still reach out to people about, okay, we got the market now, we got the people, we got the place packed up, but we're still selling the place.
Right.
So going back, it's funny how the same group of people who we tried to sell the place for 2-3 years from now are our partners right now as well. So I mean, it's all about grit. It's all about connecting yourself with the right people.
Right.
I remember back then I needed to send close to 10, 20 emails. Need to make 10 to 20 cold calls,
Right.
approaching them, but that never worked out. It's more about connections. It's more about making sure that it's the right timing for those people as well. You can never just go in there, sell a pen to every company that's visible in Thailand.
Right.
And like I said, I'm very thankful, very grateful for those people who helped us from the get-go.
Right.
To name a few, Gatorade, Anta, Decathlon, Tata, CT Tigers, Bas Wala Song Tam, Captured, still missing a few, and most of the international schools that we've partnered up with right now. I can't mention the names, but shout out to you all. You've been very helpful throughout this process and this journey. So going back to the main idea of how we set up ourselves, so making sure we find the right partnerships. Back then, we used to force what we do to those people. We have a basketball court facility, use us. We
Right.
have an academy, use us. We have merch, shirts, and everything, use us. But along the way, we kind of found out that it's not really what we need, but it's more of what they could use us for companies like Anta, Thailand, for example. They wanted us to become their community partner.
Right.
So going back to the main topic earlier that you asked, the community, why is it so important? It's
Right.
because it spreads out and expands to so many opportunities.
True.
Aligning it with the corporate brands that we partner up as well. So we do set up events, we do set up clinics, basketball clinics for those companies, and it's always been a barter deal with those companies. And
Right.
you probably could see Swish now. It's overflowing with posters, vinyls from our partners and our sponsors. But it wasn't that way back then. We had our fair share of hits and misses.
I can imagine.
People taking advantage of, I would say, smaller businesses in a way. And we kind of learned our lesson from that. So I think right now the approach, we're still aggressively pursuing more companies to partner up with, given the fact that the growth in basketball, especially with the youth, right, it's out of this world. There's a number that says from the BSAT, from the Basketball Sports Authority of Thailand, that for the year 2023 to 2024, it's the first time ever that basketball participation has outgrown football participation in Thailand.
Awesome.
Which is great news for us, who's also part of the basketball industry. So yeah, we're still in hot pursuit when it comes to making sure we find the right partners.
Right.
We help each other, we use our resources, and at the end of the day, it's all for the benefit of the kids, the parents, the clientele, the customers, and the community that we have at Swish.
Absolutely. And one thing I say that, like basketball, business is a team sport, right?
Yes.
And as much of a roller coaster ride as you've had, getting the right team members to play with in the long run makes or breaks your business.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm glad you found partners who you could stick to for the long run, and I'm sure that you'll find more great ones along the way.
Yes.
Now, there's you mentioned youth basketball, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, and we'll go into that maybe off camera.
Sure.
You obviously run an academy. You do a lot of events, a lot of brand partnerships around youth basketball. So can you tell me more about your emphasis on passing it on to the younger generation? And also, I think the background that you mentioned that you have in education that I didn't know about, does that play a factor in why you're so passionate about passing on the love for basketball to the next generation of Thai hoopers?
It does. It does. I mean, for entrepreneurs, hardcore entrepreneurs, we thrive for profit.
Right.
We had to make sure the business has a clear system, a clear goal, a long-term sustainability plan for us to pretty much survive. Mm-hmm. That's what we didn't have when we started. Like you mentioned earlier, we just had the same passion for basketball same as everybody else. Right. The youth part came in later. We started up the facility, renting it out to coaches. Mm-hmm. The community didn't work back then, so we kind of approached coaches who would come in and bring their kids, right, and then use the facility for training purposes. Still, we saw lots of kids coming in. Right. Bigger academies would start to use the place, mm-hmm, and we didn't get to tap that youth market yet. Mm-hmm. We're happy having the kids around. Right. We're happy to entertain the parents who would come, right, and then take their kids to Swish. But then I think it was only a couple years ago when we had that eye opener, because we had that misconception back then that here in Thailand, kids are very fortunate when it comes to parents supporting them, or that support system where parents would take them to classes, right, to trainings. Being born and raised in the Philippines, we did not have that privilege, right, of our parents sending us to see a coach for us to train what we have or to improve on our skill set. So I think when we realized that the demand was really there, parents and the kids' heart, mm-hmm, they're pretty much all out when they're on the court. Right. They're a different beast when they're on the court. And that's the similarity that we saw with Thais and Filipinos. Mm-hmm. So that's where we kind of expanded through Swish Academy. Right. It might be funny because for some, they would start off as an academy and then eventually build their own courts. For us, it's the other way around. Right. Shout out to a few people that I've had partners with for the academy. They all moved on to different industry, different places right now. Shout out to you guys. So they also helped me a lot in terms of learning the ropes, who to connect with, how to make sure everybody's well taken care of. They do their development, and I think it's more of having the right coaches as well, meeting the right coaches, right, for us to make sure that the course or the program is doing well. So fast forward to what we're currently in right now. Basketball is growing in Thailand. The youth basketball scene, I would say it blew up last year.
I see.
Thanks to tournament organizers, thanks to corporate brands who kind of shifted their marketing approach from lifestyle to sports,
Right.
Making sure we have that active and healthy lifestyle, promoting it at a very young age to the youth as well. So I think we kind of piggybacked on that approach where we have to develop our kids from a very young generation because we have to prepare them for tournaments,
Right.
for leagues. And I like how you mentioned teamwork earlier as well, that it doesn't only apply on the court, it doesn't only apply to businesses, but it also applies to real life. On how you take on approaches, how you take on challenges. And I think right now we are, I just went to a couple of tournaments yesterday as well. So our U12 and our U18s won the championship. So shout out to our
sweet.
kids as
Congratulations
well.
on that.
Thank you. So it's happy to see them. I think it's more of the delayed gratification that we feel for coaches, for organizers, because we put in the work almost every day, almost every week, training the kids.
Right.
And you couldn't see results from there. You see the kids play around, you see them horse around, you see them hit each other. But you see the delayed gratification once you carry that trophy and once you see the smiles on their faces, and as well as the never-ending support from the parents as well. I think that's one of the major factors in making sure you have a good program. It's not only about you showing results or producing top athletes,
Right.
or talents, but it's more on taking care of the parents and the people that you're surrounded with as well.
Interesting. Yeah, and I'm glad you stumbled into this because it is something that, especially for the growth of the sport and just growth of the community, again, for the future of basketball in Thailand, that is a very important step, and I'm glad that you're playing your role in that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you give me a great statistic that basketball outgrew the pace of growth of football in Thailand. That's,
Yes.
Sorry to all footballers out there, but that is a statistic I'm very, very happy to hear. But can you tell me more about the present and future of basketball in Thailand in general? Because I haven't read any statistics on it, but just purely eyeballing, I see more people just playing and enjoying the sport of basketball. But since you're more deeply engrossed in the entire basketball economy, can you tell me more about not just youth basketball, but in general, how you've seen the sport of basketball evolve in Thailand and what excites you about its future in Thailand?
Yeah, so I think expanding the question a little bit, I think what we have right now in the present goes back to what transpired in the past. And I think the past kind of had a major effect on why we're having this type of demand in basketball, majority in Bangkok. Back then, basketball, I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but basketball in Thailand is an expensive sport. If you were to compare it back home for me to the Philippines, we play everywhere. We play with our flip-flops, we play with our bare feet. We didn't have any equipments. We use a roughed up basketball until it ends its life pretty much. But basketball in Thailand back then originally started when you compete in a school team.
I see.
So you have to be a part of something for you to make sure you get development from there. And I think for schools, I mean, they separate you into different classes or different groups. You have your team A's, you have your team B's, and you have your team C's. Right? And when we were starting back then, I think we had a lot of group C's who beginners pretty much, or upper beginners, who would come in, try to work on their game to make sure that the following year they would make the team.
Right.
So once they get to the tryouts, they would develop already, they would develop themselves, they would have the skill set, they would have that opportunity, that exposure already from training so that they could use it in school competitions. And I think they had a limit when it comes to participating in schools, in school tournaments back then. So this was the time where all those corporate commercial leagues started to pop up. And before it was a once a month league, it expanded to twice a month. And then right now there's multiple tournaments and leagues that happens all at the same time in Bangkok. And special thanks to, of course, the people who's running the basketball scene in Thailand. I think there's some monopoly in a way as well. Once you give them that platform, you give them that opportunity, you give them that exposure, that's where the kids get that inspiration into making sure they work on their craft,
right,
and making sure they work once they arrive on the court, day in, day out, they work on their game to make sure that they perform and they pretty much don't disappoint, because it's like I mentioned earlier, basketball is not cheap. You have to pay for the court, you have to pay for your coach,
right,
you have to pay for the tournament fee as well. So I think the present right now, basketball is in good hands. It has started to get rapid and huge attention from big namers. Shout out to the YBL organization right now, who's doing a great job with the U10s and the U12s. So I think right now the interest is also growing. Right. The demand's always been there, but I think it's just growing sustainably right now as well because of upcoming tournaments that we have. And I think going back to the future, like you mentioned, as long as we have the same amount of fire, as long as we have the same amount of passion from people, it's not a very high earning industry, if I were to be frank. Unlike other industries that we are currently a part of, right. Mike, it's sports. It's all based out of passion.
True.
It's based out of your love for the game. It's based how you see yourself in continuing that dream to your next of kin. So I think. Reason why we love what we're doing right now as well, and we could confidently say the future is in good hands, it's because everybody who's on the court, we share the same amount of passion, energy, grit for the game of basketball. And for us, that's there's no amount that you can take away from that kids' smiles, from the happiness that you see from their faces, and also that satisfaction from the parents and from the kids as well.
100%. And as a new father who really wants my daughter to play basketball.
Congratulations on that, by the way.
I am hoping that people like you continue doing what you're doing so that kids her age, when they grow up, when they're old enough to play, have avenues not just to enjoy the sport but also compete and learn the life lessons that the sport teaches them as well. So I'm rooting for you to be a big part of Thailand's basketball future. Now, we come to our last question, Syd, and this is something that I'm really eager to know the answer to.
Yeah.
Is what's next? So we've heard about your journey, and as a friend, I'm proud of where you've come so far.
Yeah.
But you and I both know you're just getting started. So what's next? What other challenges do you want to take on? Any new announcements for, again, going back to the community, any new announcements for us?
Actually, I like how you mentioned earlier. I mean, sharing my struggles, sharing the hiccups, sharing what we've experienced back then, it just added fire to what already that dying passion that we already have. And I think for the short-term announcement first, on the 26th, Mike, if you allow me to promote, we will be having a 3x3 grand opening Halloween tournament here at Swish Elite. So
Nice.
it will be under the age categories of U10, U12, U14, and U18. If you have a team, please do join us. You can find all the information and details in our website or in our Facebook page or in our Instagram page. Just look us up, Swish Elite BKK. You will find all the information there. And for the long-term plan for the community, for the coaches, for the kids, athletes, and parents, I think this is the right platform for me to announce that we're currently expanding to an 8,000 square meter place right around Sukhumvit to make sure we do have you guys come and join us. It spreads out to 4 to 5 basketball courts. It will have an indoor gym as well in partnership with TNT, and it will have a parking space. Thank God, finally, for everybody. So I think that was our plan. That was our 10-year plan. And luckily, with the right people, with the right investors, with the right connections, we were able to kind of have that 6-month allowance for us to build that place. So it's our third location. Hopefully we could accommodate as much as we can. And at the end of the day, like I mentioned, it's all for the community. It's all for your passion for the game of basketball. It's all for your love for the game of basketball. And just to make sure that you guys really know Swish well, it's not just me, it's not just the brand. There's 20, 30 people working behind the scenes. And I take this opportunity to thank you all for being part of the Swish family. And we're, like you said, Mayank, we're just getting started. We just learned the ropes, had our challenges, hiccups, and I think, yes, stay tuned for what we have for you. Thank you for the never-ending support, and keep balling.
Cool. Thank you, Syd, and I really look forward to that new location. I'm hoping it is closer to my house, but if not, maybe the next one. But thank you, Syd, for taking the time. Again, I do not say this lightly when I say that I'm very happy with what you're doing. As somebody who likes to play, who likes to see the sport grow, and I'm rooting for you guys. We'll obviously see a lot more of each other on and off the court.
Yeah.
But thank you for taking the time, Syd, and we'll talk much more.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you liked the episode, please subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.